Good afternoon, everyone. Those of you that, my name is Jim Womack, and I live here in the Springfield area. Carl, when he sent out the message about this upcoming meeting, said he'd like to have a section called the Works in Progress, and I said that, yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Sanke cards. It's an interesting hobby, and even with the onset of the centennial of the Great War, still a relatively inexpensive hobby to get into. Sanke is, I guess calling this a presentation on Sanke cards is a little bit of a misnomer, but it's like talking about Civil War photography and Matthew Brady. It seems, you know, Matthew Brady, if you think about Civil War photography, the first name and the only name that pops into mind is Matthew Brady, whereas there were several, well, quite a few photographers, both North and South, that photographed the war and published their works. But Brady, I guess he knew all about marketing, as did the Sanke company. Most of the cards I do have are Sankes, but there was another company called Lersch that also produced postcards of military, the aviators, and then of course all the different kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, etc. Had their own, basically their court photographers, which also produced a lot of photographs of the aviators of their different states. It was a very popular collecting thing in Europe. At the turn of the century, photography was very popular, and people were very interested in you know, basically the celebrities of their time. You see a lot of countries where they had royalty. You could, you know, basically go into any shop, buy photographs of the king, the emperor, the prince of this, that, or the other thing. When World War I came out and you started having these new, at least in Germany, these new celebrities, heroes, they were very popular. The first one I have here is it is a Sanke card. This is of General Lieutenant von Hüttner. He was the basically the commander of the German Air Service at the time, and although not an aviator, he was very popular because of his role with the aviation field. Next is Bolka. This one is now this one is not a Sanke card. This is from the court photographer from his state.
Saxony.
Saxony, thank you. Immelman, you'll see this picture is framed in black. This was the basic. Card, but after his death, this was reproduced, smaller picture, edged in black to show that he had died, and then the poem afterwards. Alfred Friedrich, member of the imperial family, who was also a flyer, and crashed or shot down, I can't remember when, during the war. Anyone remember? Manfred, yeah, you gotta have one of those in your collection. Von Schleich, or in this picture, you'll see it's Oberleutnant Schleich. This is before he was awarded the Max Joseph Medal, which in Bavaria ennobled him and allowed him to have the name von put onto his name. Another one in his pre-war uniform, aviator's badge. And this one, if you're interested in collecting significantly the wartime era cards, you have to be very careful. This is a photograph that was from a wartime era card, But this was produced after 1933 by the National Socialist Flieger Corps. They acquired these cards and reissued them as a fundraising propaganda campaign. Another Bavarian, Lieutenant Mulzer, Max Mueller, Oberlieutenant Kiermaier, and then another one where you can see next to his name that someone has etched in a cross. That card was from after he was killed. Lieutenant Frankel, Ailes, also one of the Jewish aces in the Imperial Air Service. Basically a I don't know what you want to say, propaganda card, but it's just kind of like a card that you would have, that you would purchase, and part of the proceeds would go to support. I think this one was supporting the German Red Cross, as well as the flyers. There was also aircraft that were very popular. Seeing what your favorite pilot was flying. This is a generic card of the pilot. This one's really nice because it shows the flying gear, especially the padded helmet, as opposed to what you see in the old 1930s movies, which is the little leather helmet, and all the heavy flying gear they used for flying at high altitudes. Not just Germany, but other countries also. This one I found particularly interesting, showing women working in an aircraft factory. And this one, no, he was not a flyer. But if you'll notice right down here, you'll see the signature. This is Crown Prince Ruprecht von Bayern, commander of Heeresgruppe Ruprecht by the end of the war. Very able commander, and Bavaria being my specialty field of collecting, I was particularly interested in getting this one. But at the time, I did not notice the signature at the bottom, nor, I think, did the seller, because I bought this for €2.50 off eBay. And I got it, and honestly, I did not recognize that the signature was on there for about a couple of years. One day, I decided to take everything out, rearrange them, to get them all together. Kaiser here, the Crown Prince here, all the different kingdoms together. And I happened to turn that in the light and saw that. And so here I have for €2.50. An autographed picture by the Bavarian Crown Prince. This is possibly, well, this is obviously a late war portrait of the Crown Prince. You can tell because of the style of uniform he's wearing. It may also actually be a post-war photograph of him. But again, it's one of those neat little finds. You get something really cheap, and then you find out that it's worth a great deal more. And basically that's all I have on it, as far as my collection is concerned.
1914 to 1918, and as you're all, I'm sure, well aware, Switzerland was neutral during the Great War, but Switzerland nevertheless mobilized. And when my grandmother passed away, he died in 1971. My grandmother passed away in 1985, and this photo album came into my possession. 79 photos that he took during that period. And I hope to develop into a larger presentation. Perhaps I'll inflict it on the Western Front Association East Coast chapter at some future date, but I still need to work on that. But there were 5 aviation or aircraft pictures in that collection that I thought would be of interest to you all. So with that, again, this is my grandfather, and here we have a Hefel DH-1, which I want to thank John Gutman, who initially identified these aircraft for me some years ago, and I've since managed to get the pictures cleaned up considerably, and I think they project reasonably okay. This aircraft served from 1916 to 1919. A whopping 6 were built. It was a 2-seater recon plane. It had a top speed of 68 miles per hour and was powered by a 120 horsepower Argus AS2 inline engine, and it packed one 7.5 millimeter machine gun. 3 of these crashed, and the remainder in 1919 were considered no longer, I guess, fit or safe to use. Another view of that aircraft. And then we have the Hefel DH-3, which served from 1917 to 1939. Again, a 2-seater reconnaissance aircraft, also powered by the 120 horsepower Argus AS2 engine. 24 of these were built, and there were actually 2 other variants that came about. In 1919, they came up with the 3A, which was powered by a Hispano-Suiza engine, and then the 3B, which came along, bear with me, that came along in, my notes here say 1918, but I think that's wrong, and was powered by a 150 horsepower LFW engine, and or had a top speed of 90 miles per hour. Another view. I have no idea who this is. And an in-flight photo, and that's all I have.
Did he take that picture in flight?
I'm presuming, but I really have no idea. He didn't write very much in the way of captions in the album.
And describe the images that you actually, the nature of the...
Oh, well, the other ones that I have, they range from training exercises, mountain artillery. There are a lot of mountain artillery slides in which they're disassembling the guns, hauling them up 45-degree slopes by, manpower alone. There's some bridge building going on. He's got one photo of a Poilu, a French infantryman, which I guess was taken on the border. There's another one that's labeled on the Italienische Difesa, and you can tell who the Italian guy is because he has this big feather in his hat. The one photo that really fascinates me is one that was labeled Die erste Maschinenpistole. It's a small little, submachine gun type thing, 2 views of it, and that's all I can think of at the moment. And I hope to, again, develop that as a presentation for, maybe something like the Western Front Association, and then ultimately perhaps seek some kind of publication, perhaps in an online thing like Over the Top, like your article was just done, or something like that. It's all stuff in the future, hence work in progress.
Thank you.
Are these airplanes Swiss?
My
designed and
understanding
built?
was these were indigenously produced and designed, yes, that's my understanding. I haven't delved too far into this. Yeah, I
They
did all
both
this.
have a suspicious amount of German influence, though.
I wouldn't be
including
surprised.
the DH-1, which looks rather Ago-like.
I haven't researched this real deeply yet.
Yeah.
Isn't Argus a German engine manufacturer?
Yes. Thanks to Carl, a few months ago I was able to buy one of Henri Farré's folios. Henri Farré was a French Impressionist painter who flew with the French 1st Bombardment Group and then with other units. And so he has paintings of aerial combat, aerial scenes, done by a world-class artist that he actually experienced. I was able to buy the folio. It was part of a set of 300 that was sold in the United States to raise money for the orphans of French pilots. I have it with me. It turns out the Smithsonian also has one of the 300 examples, and they have very nice images of the prints that are in it on their website, and they are actually kind enough to let you use them for publication if you credit the Smithsonian. So I've got it over here, and I would say just, you know, during the rest of the day, come by and look at it, because you really need to see them close up. But they're absolutely phenomenal paintings, and this is really a rare treat to see something like this, because, as I say, there were only 300 examples made. So.
Tell the impetus of why this all came about, your article.
Okay. The World War I Historical Association is publishing an article in our magazine, World War I Illustrated, about Henri Farré. It was written by Dr. David Beer, who lives in Texas, and I took care of finding the illustrations and writing the captions. And so Carl and I started talking about this in our pursuit of good copies of images. Since then, I learned last week that there will be an article in Over the Front about Henri Farré and his paintings sometime in 2016. So, but please come by and take a look at the folio, because these are really incredible images. Thank you.
Just as an addendum, you're welcome. As an addendum to this, the National Collection has a couple of his original oils in, and those are available to see online as well. So if you go to the NASM website and look under collections, and then just type in the search term Farré, F-A-R-R-E, it'll bring you to this page, and then you can zoom in, and if you just go to full size, see full size image, you can see, and click it one more time, right in the middle, you can really, it's really, you have to scroll on the side.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty good resolution, and so you can virtually own your own collection.
For a lot less money than I paid.
The last time I was up here, I was talking about a work in progress of photographing the fabric of the Poisson. I seem to have gotten sidetracked by that. I came back from summer vacation and Carl said, well, we're busy rehousing the pieces from Strump that weren't used in the restoration. We need them photographed. So I have been photographing this kind of stuff.
Some assembly required.
Yes.
And I've been having them identify that too, and you can.
Yeah, there's some rib cap structure there. There's some other, but this is about 5 feet deep, 10.5 feet long, and about 5.5 feet high. And that's what's inside it. I am about a little under halfway through it. I get maybe even only a third of the way through it so far. So this is very much in progress. But what you can see there at the top left is the pilot's, the box containing the pilot's seat. Then part of the prop spinner. They didn't reuse the prop spinner in the restoration, even though it was in good shape. We had to check. The that they have for the aircraft is not the correct size for that engine. So they had to make a reproduction spinner rather than damage the original spinner, putting it all together. And then each of those trays contains pieces laid out in it. We have got much of the side paneling. This is the original side paneling, and in the condition it came off the plane in. Then we've got things, this is some of the other pieces. These are, that's actually the left stabilizer butt rib, they call it. It basically goes against the fuselage to support the left stabilizer. And then a broken rib from one of the upper wing ribs.
John, what resolution are these photographs in?
These are just random, or just capture shots of the whole thing, but components are being photographed at so that we can print them out actual size at 300 dots per inch. So that would print out to about 4, that top one, when I finish assembling the photos, would be a 400 or so, or about a 4 foot or so, 4.5 feet long photograph at 300 dots per inch, which is printing resolution for a good quality magazine. You can see some pretty good detail in there. Particularly, take a look at this piece. If we were to zoom in, this is at the original was at the 300 DPI scale. You can see the fabric imprint in the glue on the surface of that piece. You can see it again in there's the other side of it on that top piece. You can sort of see the stamp on it in the upper left corner. This is that one piece. You can see the stamp A and the notation. That notation was made by the restorers, where they got this piece from. It's from the right lower wing butt rib, where that rib, where the wing fit to the fuselage. Here's some of the fabric. And again, on this side, on the inside of you can see the lozenge pattern under it, and you can see that was actually 2 pieces that are broken apart. This was a flare cartridge holder. This is one of the fuselage supporting structures, and this was the canvas that they have behind the pilot's seat, and you can see the pattern of the fuselage bulkhead that was behind it. Here's another one of the classic pieces, the collections of pieces that didn't all get identified or broken down specifically. Carl and Charlie went through this in 2007, 2007, and put together a 400-some page PDF with photographs identifying 370 odd pieces. Since then, I have so far identified about another 60 pieces. That's without tearing into pieces like this. Here's the other side of this. You can actually see things like grommets, rib cap strips. Down here, this is actually off of the fuselage, one of the bulkheads in the fuselage. And if I remember right, it came from not this piece, but roughly in a position like that. So by looking at these things, we can identify some of the pieces where, or more or less where they would have come from, get more information that way. But that's what I've been working on now, and I haven't even started processing the photos, but I spent 15 days photographing, just taking the pictures, and 5 or 6 more going through them, just trying to isolate the parts, which includes bagging them, putting identification tags in so that we know which ones are so that we can correlate them later, and building a spreadsheet so that when we look at that big thing with those, let's see, 8, 12, 20 odd trays in assorted boxes, that if we want to find a piece, we can know which one of those trays to look in later on. And it's very much a work in progress.